y'all doing? So let's talk. Have you faced your giant? Have you faced your giant? Let me tell you this little story. So I was raised with 3 boy cousins, Mike, Anthony, and Tony. The only girl. All right. I'm the only child that my mom and dad had. So, and oftentimes as a child, if I wound up getting hurt or something like that, it was usually when me and Tony were playing together, because see, we were closer in age. We like a year and a half, about 2 years apart. So anytime something happened, I was usually with Tony. Like the first major thing happened is we had a moped. They told us don't get on the moped, and as soon as my granddaddy walked in the house, Tony was like, let's get on the moped. So we got on, and there was a clothesline in the backyard. We did 1 lap around the clothesline. And on our way back, about to top that 2nd lap, guess what happened? I got hurt. My foot slid in between the muffler and the tire of the moped. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, it did not burn my shoe. But my shoe was used as a conduit for heat. So it melted the skin off of my foot and almost to the bone. So when they pulled my foot out of my shoe, the skin came off with it. Then I had to have a surgery. You know, they had to scrape the skin off my legs, replace it on my foot. And then the second time, my granddaddy had planted some grass, so there was nothing but dirt and rocks in the backyard. And I was coming out the kitchen, which led me into the backyard, and Tony was throwing rocks. And perfect timing. As soon as I stepped out that door, Tony threw that rock, and guess what? It hit me in my nose. So it was my first nosebleed. So it was just like everything ever happened. You know, it was with me and Tony. So fast forward to adulthood. Tony left. I think he went to Florida. And he wound up coming back, and he told me this story. He said, hey man, I met this dude named Sookie. I was like, what, for real? He said, yeah, I met this dude. He was tall, he had muscles, big dude named Sookie. Well, let me explain to you who Sookie is to Tony. Sookie has been Tony's imaginary friend for as long as I can remember. And one day I found one of his notebooks, you know, as we became adults. I don't know how I ended up coming across that notebook. Maybe it was at my grandma's house. I don't know. But anyway, I wound up reading it. And guess what he had written in that book? He said, I'm sorry, we were adults at this time. He said, you know, Sookie is my imaginary friend. And Shawanda, you know, that's my cousin. That's my favorite cousin. But Sookie don't like Shawanda. He said, Sookie said that Shawanda talks too much. And she tell everything. Okay. So for Tony to tell me that he met a guy named Sookie struck a nerve in me. I was just like, oh my God. And just after he passed, I started having these thoughts. I was like, you know what? God allowed Tony to face his fear or his giant. Okay, because remember his imaginary friend's name was Sookie. So he has come face to face. He was given the opportunity to come face to face with a man named Sookie. And if you're not familiar with this, the Bible talks about a strong man and how you can't enter into a man's house unless you bind up the strong man. You know, strong man, like the dudes that lift weights and, you know, have all the muscles. Well, that's what our fears are an example of. This strong man. Remember David and Goliath? Goliath was going around taunting and bullying people, and David was sent out by his father Jesse to go take his brother's lunch. So while he was out there, Goliath, you know, reared his head, and he was just like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that keep, you know, causing fear over our people? And his brother was like, hey, whoever kills Goliath will receive wealth. You know, Saul will give you his daughter in marriage, give you wealth. You don't have to pay family taxes. You know, all the perks. You know, if you get rid of this Philistine. So David was like, okay, he was up for the challenge. So when David faced him, Goliath was still, you know, doing what he do. He was trying to instill fear. He was picking and bullying and all this stuff. And he asked David, he was like, so would you come to me with this stick? What, you gonna run me off like I'm a dog or something? And David told him, you know, you come to me with your sword, because of course Goliath had a sword. David said, you come to me with your sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord, the all-powerful. Okay? So, long story short, David slayed the giant. He cut Goliath's head off and brought it back. All right. So Tony had the opportunity to face his giant. Now, I'm not saying that the man was his giant or he was afraid of that man or what have you. No, I'm saying that man whose name was Sookie, which was Tony's imaginary friend, that I believe had a lot to do with a lot of things that went on in his life. I just believe that it was a bloodline thing. In the same way with this fear that is a giant in your life that keeps showing up, you know, has God given you the opportunity to face your fear or your giant? You didn't have the courage or the faith, okay, to stand up to it. I say that because remember, Goliath was he was bullying everybody in town until David showed up. Okay, so has he given you the opportunity to face your giant and you didn't have the faith or the courage to do so? I believe with everything in me that that was Tony's opportunity to face his giant. Whatever's going on in the natural realm or in the natural is a reflection of what's going on in the spirit or the spiritual realm. So if he had the opportunity to meet this man physically named Sookie, which was also his imaginary friend's name, that he has always said, anytime he'd done something, he would always say that it was Sookie. Sookie made him do it. So, you know, after he passed away, I'm just like, you know what, I'm beginning to think that was some demonic influence, you know, that was playing with us, you know, because that was like a freak accident for my foot to slip between the muffler and the tire of that moped. How in the world did that happen? I just think it's all spiritual, if you ask me. Okay, so it just led me to question, have you been given the opportunity to face your fears, but because that giant was so big, or because you were so distracted by everything else going on around you, you know, the world had your attention, that you didn't recognize it, or you didn't want to go through with it because it was going to take too much of what your flesh desired away from you. It was going to take too much of that away. You're going to have to give up too much, you know, so you just like, you know what, I'm not even going to deal with that. But the thing about it is, if you don't deal with it, then that uncircumcised Philistine will continue to taunt and bully your bloodline. Because Goliath was showing up every day. He was showing up so much like he was the talk of the town. They're like, do you see how that giant keeps showing up? That's what they were saying. Read it. It's in the Bible. 1 Samuel chapter 17. They were saying like, do you see how that giant keeps showing up? But when he showed up, everybody just scattered. And that is what's going on in our bloodline. Until somebody decides, I don't care how big this giant is. I don't care if all I have is a stick. As long as I have the all-powerful behind me, fighting with me, fighting for me, I'm gonna come out a champion in this thing. So if it's so whatever that fear is, you know, fear of an addiction, the fear of being alone. I used to be afraid of driving. Okay, anything that can have you in bondage is a giant in your life, and that is something that we need to tackle. So don't let it be that God allowed you to face your giant and you turned and went the other way. Tony used to have dreams about, he said, I don't dream much, but when I do, something is always chasing me. Or I'm stuck in a house and I can't find my way out. Man, that's fear and anxiety. I don't know exactly what he was afraid of. You know, I don't know everything that he might have been afraid of, but man, that's fear. And we have to realize that fear is the root of any type of giant that's in our lives. You know, you can have a fear of success. How can we be afraid of success? Because it's real. Because there's a lot of responsibility behind prospering. Okay. I just wanted to pose that question this morning and ask you, have you been given the opportunity to face your giant, but you turned away? Okay? Talk to you later.